So today's topic is overcoming fear. Fear is something that can absolutely, without question, have a tremendously negative effect on anyone's career. So I'm going to hit this at a couple different levels. Fear itself is the third most powerful motivator for human beings. I've mentioned before that number one is love because it's selfless. Number two is self-justification, which causes all sorts of problems. But number three, fear, it's an actual motivator. A lot of people don't think of fear as being a motivator. They think of it as being kind of an obstacle, but it's actually a motivator. When you are afraid of something there, you are motivated to go over here. And this is a very important principle to understand. So if you're afraid of taking a risk as an entrepreneur, you're not going to go into that risk. You're going to go over there. You're going to run from it. So here's how it plays out. Let's say you're in sales. Sales in and itself is kind of like a microcosm of entrepreneurship, especially if you're 100% commission. While you may not have a tremendous amount of expenses, there is the need for you to go out and perform in order to receive the income. If you are a small business or a medium or larger business, you still have the same effect. You have to drive sales, and those sales have to overcome the expenses that are associated with your business. But to use the very easy to understand, isolated individual experience of selling something on straight commission, if you're afraid of selling, what happens quite often is you don't go, I'm afraid. I'm afraid of the phone. I'm afraid of objections. I'm afraid of rejection. Instead, what you're going to do is you're going to say, I'm going to get organized today. See, because if you jumped right into the phoning, jumped right into the prospecting, jumped right into the presentation, that's what you're afraid of. So what do? You're motivated to avoid it. So you avoid it. But see, if you just avoided it and you looked in the mirror and you said, you know why I avoided that? Because I'm fearful. And you know what? I'm a little wimpy right now. Nobody does that. That's too hard to do. In fact, the courage you would take to admit your fear is ironically kind of tension between the fear itself and the courage that it takes to admit it. So instead what you do is you hide from the fact that you're afraid, and you don't come out and say you're afraid. Instead you say, I'm working on a new CRM. That's what I'm doing. I'm becoming organized. I'm going to spend all day becoming organized because I know in my heart of hearts, that if I actually just made calls, something I could probably do with a yellow pad, okay, I would have to do something I'm afraid of. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to look ultra responsible. So when those people around me, boss, colleagues, my wife, whoever it happens to be, says, how did you do in sales today? I can say I was getting organized. So I can feel important and I can feel impressive. This is the human condition. These things absolutely get in our way all the time. Fear is highly destructive. So you might say, okay, thanks, Dave. You gave me that, but I'm still afraid. Well, I'm going to give you some exercises on how to not be afraid. If you're afraid of something over here, you don't necessarily always jump into it, but you step closer to it. And you move a little bit closer to that. I remember in my early days of martial arts, I was afraid to fight. I was a younger guy, and if I were to get in the ring with somebody and I knew they were very good at it, it was very intimidating. It was hard. So I started sparring with people that I was equally matched with until I was able to raise myself up to a high level. And I started that way. You don't start off fighting Jackie Chan, okay? You've got to start off a little bit lower until you build your confidence. So if you're afraid of diving in and being, somebody at such a huge level that you think, oh, as an entrepreneur, I'm going to risk $3 million and try to start a hotel in this obscure area, well, probably not a good way to start it right away. Why don't you instead start a smaller business, conquer your fears, move into it further and further. If you're afraid of presenting in front of a particular client, present in front of a smaller portion of who that client would be, build up those muscles, and then get in front. Experience is a tremendous builder of courage. And the only way that you can get experience is to dive in. And if you dive into something that you can manage, you're going to be fine. You don't start out as a professional baseball player. You start out in Little League and you move your way all the way up. So that's probably the best way to do it. Now, here's the really good news. You might say, yes, but I need big league money and I need it now. I can't wait in smaller things. Well, you can get this experience and build this courage over a relatively short period of time by using compression, okay, or I should say frequency. If you're going to make one phone call every day for a period of 2 years, yeah, it's going to take forever for you to build this muscle of courage. But if you made all of those phone calls in 1 hour or 1 day or 2 days, you can get this done quickly. So go after it, face your fears, start small, build big, condense the amount of experience you have in a short period of time, and you'll be able to be unstoppable.